You wake up beneath a broken overpass, in a city that feels abandoned, empty, and strangely quiet. There are no crowds, no voices, no movement, just the faint echo of alarms, the rustle of leaves, and the soft hum of something unseen in the distance. Out of the shadows, you notice a creature struggling. Its head is stuck inside a bucket, thrashing around in panic. That's your first encounter with what this game is really about. You remove the bucket, calm the creature, and suddenly you're no longer alone. This is a calicorn, a fantastical beast that looks part ram, part yak, and part mystery. And with that simple moment of compassion, the story of Herdling begins. At first glance, Herdling looks like just another indie adventure game. But if you've played titles like Journey, Abzû, or Far Lone Sails, you know there's something different going on here. It's not a game about combat, or competition, or complex mechanics. It's a game about presence, about taking things slow, paying attention, and carrying the weight of responsibility for creatures that depend entirely on you. Herdling was developed by Evocative, the Swiss studio known for the Far series. Games that manage to create an emotional bond between players and machines without using a single word of dialogue. With Herdling, they take that same philosophy but apply it to living creatures instead of vehicles. And the result is a story that feels both intimate and overwhelming, set in a world that seems to be falling apart. The premise is deceptively simple. You are a silent shepherd guiding a growing herd of calicorns across mountains, forests, lakes, and forgotten cities. The mechanics revolve around herding, light environmental puzzles, and a few moments of high tension when danger strikes. You don't issue commands in the traditional sense. Instead, you position yourself behind the herd, nudge them in certain directions, and carefully guide them to safety. At first, it feels awkward. You're not clicking on the ground and watching them move like obedient AI companions. You have to actually shepherd them. Walk too close to their left side and they swing away to the right. Hold your guiding stick too high and they stumble into hazard. Slowly, you realize that every movement you make matters. You're not just a player giving orders. You're part of the herd, and their survival depends on you being present. And yes, they can die. That's one of the things that makes Herdling so impactful. The calicorns aren't just faceless creatures following you around. They each feel distinct. Different sizes, fur patterns, horn shapes, and even subtle personality quirks. Some are playful, others more cautious, some stubborn, some gentle. You can name each one, and after spending hours feeding them, tending to them, and even decorating them with little ornaments you find along the way, losing one feels genuinely painful. The game makes you care, and that's where its strength lies. But Herdling isn't just about the creatures. The world itself is haunting and beautiful. The art style is hand-drawn and painterly, with a balance between realism and animation that makes every environment feel like a living storybook. You move from ruined urban areas filled with rusting cars and empty streets to wide open meadows, fog-covered lakes, and dizzying mountain passes. There are no lines of dialogue, no text to explain what happened to this world. Instead, you piece it together through fragments, totems that hint at past journeys, crumbling infrastructure that speaks of a civilization long gone, and dreamlike visions that suggest your role is part of something bigger, maybe even predestined. The silence is filled by the soundtrack, composed by Joel Shaw. His music moves effortlessly from soft, ambient tones to powerful orchestral flourishes. One moment you're creeping quietly through a forest, trying not to disturb the birds hidden in the branches. The next, you're leading your herd in a full stampede across open plains as the music swells with crashing horns and soaring woodwinds. It's the kind of score that doesn't just accompany the game, it defines it. And then there's the atmosphere. Herdling belongs to a category often called relaxing or cinematic games. But that label doesn't capture the whole experience. Relaxing, yes, but also tense, melancholic, even heartbreaking at times. Because while the game looks soft and gentle on the surface, it doesn't shy away from showing danger, loss, and the weight of responsibility. In many ways, Herdling is the evolution of what people once called walking simulators. Games where the focus isn't on challenge, but on immersion and storytelling through exploration. Think of Firewatch, where the narrative comes from observing the environment, or Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons, where the bond between characters is felt through mechanics. Herdling builds on those foundations but adds its own twist. You're not just walking through the world, you're bringing others with you. And that makes every step heavier, every choice more meaningful. This is why the game resonates so strongly with players. Steam reviews at launch were overwhelmingly positive, praising not just the visuals and the soundtrack, but the feeling of guiding the calicorns. People talk about the quiet moments around campfires, when the herd gathers to rest. They talk about naming their creatures, only to lose one to a cliff or a trap, and how much it hurt. They talk about how a 3-hour game managed to leave a bigger emotional impact than titles they spent months playing. It's not about size, it's about intimacy, and that intimacy is what makes Herdling so unique in today's gaming landscape. While the industry often celebrates games for being massive, complex, or endlessly replayable, Herdling is none of those things. It's short, it's straightforward. Some critics even say it's too simple, with controls that feel clunky at times and puzzles that don't offer much challenge. But for the people who connect with it, that simplicity is exactly what makes the experience so powerful. Because Herdling isn't trying to overwhelm you, it's trying to make you feel. So let's go deeper. What does it actually feel like to play Herdling? At its core, the game is built around the act of guiding. You're constantly moving with your herd, making small adjustments to keep them safe. You press and hold a trigger to mark a path forward, and the calicorns follow that line. But it's not a fire and forget system. You can't just mark a spot and let them go. You need to move behind them, watching carefully, and be ready to stop them at any moment. The danger isn't constant, but when it arrives, it's nerve-wracking. Sharp spikes litter the ground. Fragile ice threatens to break beneath their feet. Strange bird-like predators lurk in the trees, waiting for sudden movement. In those moments, Herdling transforms from calm meditation to tense survival. You slow down, reposition yourself, and pray that your herd doesn't scatter. And here's where the magic happens. Because these aren't just AI pawns. They're creatures you've come to care about. You named them. You fed them. You watched them nuzzle against you or flop down by a campfire. So when one of them gets hurt, or worse, when one of them is lost, the game delivers a kind of emotional punch that few adventures ever manage. That feeling of responsibility is what separates Herdling from countless other atmospheric games. In Journey, you're a lone traveler. In Abzû, you swim through beautiful oceans largely by yourself. But here, you're never truly alone. The herd is with you, relying on you, and in turn, giving you a sense of belonging in a world that otherwise feels deserted. Now, it's important to acknowledge that Herdling isn't perfect. Critics and players have pointed out its flaws. The herding controls can feel clunky, especially in tight spaces. Sometimes the calicorns double back for no reason, or get stuck against obstacles. Performance on certain platforms, especially the original Nintendo Switch, suffers from frame rate drops that can pull you out of the immersion. And yes, the puzzles are light. You'll push objects, flip switches, maybe guide the herd through a few different colored fields that give them temporary abilities. But you won't be scratching your head for hours. The game isn't about complexity. It's about atmosphere. Some reviewers felt that the simplicity held it back, preventing Herdling from fully reaching its potential. But for many players, those criticisms don't matter, because Herdling succeeds where it counts most, in creating an emotional connection. That's the element people remember, not whether the puzzle design was clever or whether the textures looked sharp in every scene, but the feeling of leading your calicorns to safety. The relief of watching them rest by a fire after a long trek. The pride of keeping them alive until the end. The sting of losing one along the way. It's also worth considering the larger trend Herdling is part of. Over the last decade, we've seen a rise in what some call vibe games or cozy adventures. Titles like Jusant, Spiritfarer, or even Animal Crossing prove that players crave experiences beyond combat and competition. Herdling fits squarely into that movement, but with its own identity. Where Spiritfarer is about letting go, and Animal Crossing is about community building, Herdling is about trust. It's about guiding creatures that have no reason to follow you, except that you chose to help them. And in a way, that's a powerful metaphor. The world of Herdling is empty, silent, almost post-apocalyptic. But instead of focusing on survival or despair, the game highlights connection, care, and the simple act of leading others forward. It suggests that even in a ruined world, meaning can be found in companionship and responsibility. This is why the game has been compared so often to Okamotive's earlier work, the Far series. In those games, the emotional bond was with a machine, a fragile, clunky vehicle that you had to repair and maintain. In Herdling, that same philosophy is applied to living creatures. And the effect is even stronger because the creatures respond to you. They show affection. They limp when they're hurt. They rest when they're tired. They look back at you as if to say, "Are you coming?" By the time you reach the end of the game, you realize something important. Herdling isn't about where you're going. It's about who you brought with you. The final act is short but intense, pushing your ability to keep everyone alive to the limit. And when the credits roll, just 3 or 4 hours after you began, the experience feels complete. Not because every mystery was explained, but because the journey left an imprint. Some players have said they wish the game were longer, that it expanded its mechanics more, or gave the calicorns deeper personalities. And maybe that's true. But others argue that its brevity is part of its strength. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It arrives, it moves you, and it leaves. And honestly, in an industry filled with endless open worlds and games that demand dozens of hours, that kind of restraint feels refreshing. So, should you play Herdling? That depends on what you're looking for. If you want fast action, deep mechanics, or replay value, you'll probably be disappointed. But if you're open to a slower, quieter, more emotional experience, Herdling will likely stay with you long after you finish it. It's a game that asks for patience, empathy, and presence. And in return, it gives you something rare, a genuine connection with digital creatures that somehow feel alive. It's not a blockbuster, and it doesn't try to be. But in 2025, Herdling stands out precisely because it offers something different. A reminder that games don't always need to be massive or complex to matter. Sometimes, all it takes is a herd of clumsy, lovable beasts, a mysterious world, and a player willing to guide them home. And that's why Herdling is more than just a game. It's an experience, one that proves, once again, that the smallest stories can sometimes carry the heaviest weight.